Ethan was sunk deep into the charcoal gray leather couch in his Austin loft, a cold IPA in his hand, his eyes tracking lines of code on his laptop. It was a quiet Thursday, almost midnight, and he was debugging a personal project, a welcome mental palate cleanser after a long day at the fintech startup where he worked as a senior software engineer. The expansive apartment was his for the night, a silent sanctuary of polished concrete floors and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city's glittering skyline. Isabella, his wife of just 2 months, had left a few hours earlier. She'd kissed him goodbye, her lips tasting of the expensive lipstick she always wore. She was heading to a mandatory late-night Women in Leadership networking event hosted by her company, a luxury fashion brand where she was a marketing manager. Ethan had offered to pick her up afterward, but she'd insisted it was fine, that it would probably run late and he should just relax. At the time, her insistence had felt like a thoughtful gesture from a wife who understood the draining nature of his work. His phone buzzed on the concrete coffee table, the screen illuminating with Leo's name. Leo had been Ethan's best friend since their freshman year at UT Austin. Theirs was a friendship built on late-night study sessions, cheap tacos, and an unshakable, decade-long loyalty. Ethan frowned at the time. Leo rarely called this late, unless it was an emergency. He saved his project and answered, "Hey man, what's up? Everything okay?" Leo's voice on the other end was tight, wound with a hesitation Ethan had never heard before. "Ethan, man, I'm at the Summit Lounge, and damn, I don't even know how to say this." Ethan's stomach clenched. As an engineer, he recognized a critical error warning when he heard one. Something in Leo's tone signaled a system failure. "Just spit it out, Leo. What is it?" "Your wife's here, Bella, and she's with some guy. I mean, really with him. Like, all over him. They're dancing, kissing. Man, I'm so sorry I have to be the one to tell you this." Ethan's world, a world built on logic, data, and predictable outcomes, suddenly glitched. The algorithm of his life had just returned a fatal error. He sat bolt upright, the IPA nearly sloshing out of its can. "Are you sure it's her?" "She's at a work event, a networking thing." The words sounded hollow even to him, a desperate attempt to patch a catastrophic bug. "Dude, I am looking right at her. Red dress, the one you bought her for your honeymoon in Italy, the one you wouldn't shut up about. It's definitely her. Ethan, I wouldn't call you if I wasn't 1,000% sure." The mention of the dress was a targeted strike. The red silk dress he'd bought her in a small boutique in Florence, imagining her wearing it to a candlelit dinner overlooking the Arno. Not this, never this. Ethan was already on his feet, a surge of pure, volatile adrenaline flooding his system. "Where are you?" "Exactly. Stay there. I'm on my way." He hung up before Leo could respond, his hands already grabbing his car keys. The Summit Lounge was a trendy rooftop bar on 6th Street, a 20-minute drive in normal Austin traffic. Ethan made it in 12, weaving through traffic with a volatile mix of cold fury and disbelief. Every thought was a line of corrupted code. Bella lying. Bella with another man. Bella, his wife of 64 days, rendering their entire shared source code obsolete. How could a system crash so completely, so quickly? When Ethan pulled up to the valet, Leo was waiting by the entrance, looking visibly sick, his phone clutched in his hand. The bar's cool blue neon sign cast shifting shadows across his worried face. "Ethan, before you go in, you need to see this. I recorded it. I figured you'd need the data." Leo handed over his phone. Ethan felt a wave of nausea as he watched the short video. There was Bella, breathtaking in that red dress, the fabric catching the light as she moved. But she wasn't moving for him. She was dancing, her body pressed intimately against a tall guy with an artsy haircut and a well-groomed beard. His hands were locked on her waist, their hips moving in a slow, suggestive rhythm that left nothing to the imagination. And then In crystal clear HD, they kissed. It wasn't a peck, not a mistake. It was a deep, lingering kiss between two people who were clearly far more than colleagues. Ethan had to grip the velvet rope stand at the entrance to steady himself. Where is she now? His voice was eerily calm, a default defense mechanism his brain had deployed to prevent a total system overload. Last I saw, they were still on the dance floor, near the main bar. She hasn't seen me. Leo looked genuinely pained. You want me to go in with you? I can back you up. No, I'll handle this myself. Ethan handed the phone back, his decision made. He walked into the Summit Lounge, his steps measured and deliberate. The air inside was thick with the scent of expensive perfume, craft cocktails, and the low thrum of deep house music. Strobe lights sliced through the stylishly dim rooftop space, illuminating flashes of the beautiful, laughing people packed inside. Ethan moved through the crowd, his focus absolute, scanning the bodies like a facial recognition program. And then he saw her. There was Bella, radiant and smiling, completely absorbed in her moment with the bearded guy. One of her hands rested on his chest, her fingers tracing the collar of his designer shirt. The other held a flute of champagne. They were in their own bubble, oblivious to the hundreds of people around them. Her companion whispered something in her ear, and she tilted her head back and laughed. It was the same bright, uninhibited laugh that had echoed across the shores of Lake Como on their wedding day, the same laugh he'd fallen in love with. Ethan walked directly toward them, stopping less than 3 feet away. He didn't speak. He just stood there, watching, a silent, unmovable presence in their perfect little world. It took a few seconds, but Bella eventually sensed him. Her eyes, still sparkling with laughter, drifted past her partner's shoulder and met Ethan's. She froze. The color drained from her face, her vibrant smile vanishing as if deleted. The champagne flute trembled in her hand, the liquid sloshing dangerously close to the rim. Ethan. Her voice was a choked, panicked whisper that barely carried over the music. What are you doing here? ATN. She instinctively pulled away from the bearded man, her hand flying to her mouth as if to stifle the lie that was about to escape. Ethan? Oh my God! What are you doing here? Ethan almost laughed. The sheer, unadulterated absurdity of the question was a masterpiece of denial. Me? What am I doing here? Sarcasm, cold and precise as a line of code, dripped from every word. I'm not sure. Why don't you tell me what you're doing here, Bella? I thought you were at a Women in Leadership networking event. I guess this must be the keynote speaker? He gestured with his chin toward the graphic designer, who now looked like he wanted to phase through the floor. The man, realizing he was at the epicenter of a marital meltdown, began a subtle, sideways shuffle, trying to dissolve into the crowd. Ethan's hand shot out and grabbed his arm. Not hard, but with the unyielding grip of a man who had nothing left to lose. No, no, no. You stay. I want everyone to have the full data set here. Ethan deliberately raised his voice, looking around. The confrontational energy had already created a small pocket of silence in the pulsing club. Several nearby groups had stopped dancing and were now watching, their faces a mixture of curiosity and secondhand horror. Let me just provide some context for everyone, Ethan announced, his voice cutting through the baseline. This is my wife, Isabella. We got married exactly 2 months ago. 2 months. He let the words hang in the air. And tonight, she told me she was improving her career prospects at a leadership seminar. Instead, she's here, physically integrated with this guy. Interesting data point, huh? Bella immediately burst into tears, a well-rehearsed performance of panicked regret. It was a flood, as if she'd flipped a switch. Baby, this isn't what it looks like. I can explain. It's not what it looks like? Ethan pulled Leo's phone from his pocket. The video was still queued up. He held the screen inches from her face, the bright light illuminating her tear-streaked cheeks. "Then, you debug this for me, Bella. Because from my perspective, the output looks a lot like my wife of 2 months kissing another guy at a rooftop bar while wearing the dress I bought her on our honeymoon in Italy. But hey, maybe I'm misinterpreting the data. Maybe that's just how they network at your leadership events." The graphic designer, trapped and sweating under the club lights, finally spoke. "Dude, look, I didn't know she was married," he stammered. "She wasn't wearing a ring when we met at the office happy hour last week." "Of course she wasn't," Ethan shot back, his voice dripping with venom. "I'm sure that $10,000 custom-designed ring just mysteriously slipped off her finger before she walked in here, right? Or maybe she tucked it safely in her purse so it wouldn't get in the way of her plans for the night." He turned his cold gaze back to Bella, who was now trembling visibly. "How long, Bella? How long has this been going on? And don't lie to me. My tolerance for bugs in the system is at 0 right now." Bella let out a gut-wrenching sob, wiping at her ruined makeup with shaking hands. "A few weeks," she finally murmured, the confession barely audible over a nearby bass drop. "I met Caleb at a work happy hour, and we just started talking." "Caleb." Ethan repeated the name as if it were a foreign, distasteful object in his mouth. "So you're telling me the ink wasn't even dry on our marriage license, and you were already running a background process with another guy? We hadn't even finished uploading our honeymoon pictures to the cloud, and you already had someone else lined up." The reality was colder, more calculated than he could have imagined. Ethan took a deliberate step back, creating physical distance as if her presence were a virus. "You know what the biggest design flaw is here, Bella? It's not even the cheating itself. It's that I actually bought into your entire user interface. I believed the whole package. I believed you when you said you loved me, that you wanted to build a life with me, that you were ready to be my wife. Remember crying at the altar and saying it was the happiest day of your life? I believed you." He let out a short, harsh laugh. "What an idiot, huh?" Bella tried to move toward him, her hands outstretched in a desperate plea. "Ethan, please listen to me. I made a terrible, terrible mistake. I know I did, but I really do love you." This was just stupidity, a moment of weakness. "No," Ethan's voice sliced through the air like a razor. "Don't touch me. You made a choice. You made a series of choices. You made your choice tonight when you decided to come here instead of being an honest partner. You made a choice when you wore the dress from our honeymoon to impress this guy. You made a choice every time you lied to me, to your sister Olivia, to everyone." Ethan looked at Caleb, who seemed to be shrinking into himself. "You can have her, man. Seriously, she's all yours now. Good luck. You're going to need it." He leaned in slightly, his voice low but carrying. "And here's some free advice. Run a constant diagnostic on her, because her fidelity firewall is clearly non-existent." He turned to leave, but stopped one last time, raising his voice for the benefit of the rapt audience. "All right, folks, show's over. Just another marriage beta test that failed in less than 60 days. Enjoy the rest of your night." The public humiliation was a palpable wave that crashed over Bella. She collapsed into a fresh torrent of tears as dozens of judgmental eyes and more than a few phone cameras turned toward her. In the world of marketing and image she so carefully curated, she had just become the night's most viral, pathetic spectacle. Ethan walked out of the club at a clipped, furious pace, Leo jogging to catch up. "Ethan, wait. Are you okay to drive?" "No," Ethan said, stopping in the cool night air of the parking lot, his hands shaking with a mixture of adrenaline and rage. "But I will be." He took several deep, shuddering breaths, trying to force the chaotic code in his head to compile. "Thanks for calling me, Leo. Seriously, I know that wasn't an easy call to make." "That's what friends are for," Leo said, putting a firm hand on his shoulder. "I wasn't going to let you live in a simulation, man." He paused. "Want to come over to my place? I've got a full fridge of IPAs, and you shouldn't be alone right now. .com. Ethan shook his head, the motion sharp and decisive. No, I need to go home. I've got some system maintenance to perform. He wouldn't have been able to sleep, even if he'd wanted to. The rage was a white-hot server overload, but beneath it, a cold, logical process was already executing. He wasn't going to be a victim, a sad statistic in a database of failed marriages. He was going to act. When Ethan arrived back at the loft, the first thing he did was initiate a comprehensive data sweep. If Bella had been bold enough to operate so openly, she must have left vulnerabilities everywhere. He went straight to their shared home office, a sleek space with minimalist furniture and matching high-end computers. And there, sitting on the polished concrete desk, was Bella's tablet, the one she often forgot to take with her. Ethan picked it up. She had never bothered to change the password from the default one he'd set up for her, their wedding date, either an act of supreme trust or, more likely, supreme carelessness. What he found was a complete system log of her betrayal. Messages, dozens of them, between Bella and Caleb D. He scrolled through the conversation history, each text a new, painful data point. Can't stop thinking about you after that meeting. Bella, you have no idea. This networking event tonight is such a drag. Wish I was with you instead. Caleb, ditch it. Come over after. Bella, can't. Ethan's home. He thinks I'm building my career. Little does he know. Another thread. Bella, Ethan is so predictable. All he cares about is code and algorithms. You actually understand the creative world. And then, the kill shot. A message dated just a week earlier. Sometimes I think I married the wrong person. Ethan is stable, has a great job. He'll be a good provider. But you make me feel things I haven't felt in years. Ethan felt like he'd been hit by a denial of service attack, his emotional core completely overwhelmed. So that was it. He was the stable server, the reliable back-end infrastructure, while Caleb was the flashy, exciting user interface. He was the hard-working engineer, providing the resources for their life, while she was out having fun with the creative. Methodically, Ethan began to secure the evidence. He took high-resolution screenshots of everything, airdropped them to his own devices, and uploaded them to a secure, encrypted cloud server. Every incriminating message, every flirtatious photo they'd exchanged. He then accessed her phone's location data, synced to her tablet. It showed at least 5 visits to an apartment complex across town in the last 3 weeks, all during times she'd claimed to be at late work meetings or out with girlfriends. Every lie was now documented, every betrayal, timestamped and cataloged. It was almost 3 a.m. when he finally finished his data extraction. He hadn't just found a bug, he'd uncovered a malicious script running in the background of his entire life. Ethan didn't sleep that night. By 7 a.m. Friday, he was on the phone with Marcus Cole, a sharp, no-nonsense divorce attorney a colleague had used. Cole answered personally, his voice crisp and alert even at that early hour. Ethan, yes. My colleague mentioned you might be calling. What can I do for you? I need to schedule an urgent consultation. I want to file for divorce. Today, if possible. Understood, Cole said without hesitation. Let me check my calendar. Can you be at my office at 9 a.m.? And bring every piece of data you have. At exactly 9 a.m., Ethan was sitting in Marcus Cole's downtown Austin office, a flash drive containing the meticulously organized evidence in his hand. Cole listened to the entire story, his expression unreadable, occasionally jotting down notes on a legal pad. When Ethan finished, Cole leaned back in his chair. You've got an ironclad case, he said finally. Proven adultery, extremely recent marriage, no children, and clear evidence of premeditation and deception. In Texas, that will weigh heavily in your favor, especially regarding asset division. The loft we live in was mine before the marriage, Ethan stated, anticipating the next question. I bought it with the proceeds from my stock options at my previous company. The title is solely in my name. Cole nodded approvingly. Excellent. That's separate property, not community. She won't be entitled to a penny of it. What about joint accounts? We have a joint checking account we opened after the wedding, but the bulk of the money is from my salary and a joint credit card she primarily uses. I recommend you close that credit card immediately, Cole advised, and transfer 90% of the funds from the joint checking into a new individual account. Do it today. Do not wait. He tapped the desk decisively. I'll draft the divorce petition and file it this afternoon. Based on this evidence, she won't have a leg to stand on. This will be fast, and it will be clean. Ethan left the lawyer's office feeling a sense of control returning for the first time in 12 agonizing hours. He drove straight to the bank, canceled the joint credit card, opened a new account, and executed the fund transfer. Then he went home and began to systematically pack Bella's belongings. Clothes, shoes, makeup, designer handbags, all went into the expensive suitcases she'd bought for their honeymoon. He wasn't being cruel or destructive. He was simply debugging, removing corrupted files from his life. Bella arrived home around 2 p.m., her eyes swollen and red from crying. She was still wearing the rumpled red dress from the night before, a scarlet letter of her own making. She stopped dead in the doorway, her gaze falling on the stack of suitcases and boxes by the door. Ethan, we need to talk. No, Ethan said, his voice a flat, icy monotone from the couch where he sat waiting. You don't talk, you listen. I'm going to be very clear, because I have no more time or processing power to waste on this. Our marriage is over. There will be no discussion, no couples therapy, no, let's try to work it out. It's done. Terminated. He let the word hang in the air. I filed for divorce this morning. Bella staggered back as if he'd physically struck her. Ethan, please. You can't. We can talk this through. Talk? Ethan let out a humorless laugh. You want to talk now? Where was this desire to communicate when you were sneaking around with Caleb? When you were texting him that you married the wrong person? He watched her face go pale. Oh, yes. I saw all the messages, Bella. Every single one. You went through my tablet? Your tablet that you left unlocked on the desk? Ethan confirmed without a hint of apology. Yes, and I now have a full backup of everything. Every message, every photo, every documented lie. So don't even try to pretend this was just a mistake, or that it only happened once. This has been going on for weeks, practically since we got back from Italy. Jeanette. Bella collapsed onto the polished concrete floor, her designer dress pooling around her as she devolved into racking sobs. I'm so sorry, Ethan. I really am. I've ruined everything. I don't even know what came over me. I'll tell you what came over you. Ethan stood up, looking down at the crumpled form of the woman he thought he knew. His voice was devoid of heat, carrying the chilling finality of a terminal command. You're a selfish algorithm. You ran a cost-benefit analysis and decided you wanted security and excitement in parallel. You wanted a stable husband with a high-paying tech job to fund your lifestyle and an exciting creative boyfriend to make you feel alive. You wanted to have your cake and eat it too. He paused, letting the cold truth settle. But you know what happens to greedy people who try to run conflicting programs, Bella? They end up with nothing but corrupted data. He gestured with a flick of his wrist toward the packed suitcases. All your stuff is right there. I've scheduled you for a complete uninstall. You have until Sunday evening to get every last one of your files out of this loft. On Monday morning, I'm changing all the access keys. The loft is mine. Bought with my money before we were married, so you have zero claim to it. You can stay with your parents, or you can go stay at Caleb's apartment, the one you've been visiting so frequently. It's not my problem to solve. Ethan, please, she begged, her voice thick with tears, trying to crawl toward him. But he was already turning, heading toward the master bedroom. "This conversation is over, Bella. My lawyer will be in contact with yours. And just so you know," he added, stopping at the bedroom door, "I also forwarded the entire data package, our conversations, the location history, even a few choice screenshots of you and Caleb using company Slack channels to plan your meetups to your company's HR department. Apparently, they have some pretty strict policies about undisclosed relationships between employees, not to mention using company resources for personal affairs. So, you and Caleb should have plenty of free time to be creative together very soon." The look of absolute horror that washed over her face would have been satisfying if Ethan hadn't felt so utterly drained, so completely exhausted by the sheer weight of her deception. He stepped into the bedroom, closed the door, and locked it, leaving her alone with her tears and the consequences of her choices. Over the weekend, as promised, Bella moved out. Ethan didn't see her go. She and her sister Olivia cleared out her things while he was at Leo's place. On Monday morning, he had the locks on the loft changed. He blocked her number on his phone, and when she tried emailing him desperate, rambling apologies, he simply created a filter that sent them directly to a trash folder, unread. There was no new input she could provide that would alter the outcome. The program had been terminated. The most satisfying system update came the following Tuesday. Leo called, his voice buzzing with vindication. "Dude, you are not going to believe this. Caleb got fired, and Bella is in deep trouble." "How'd you hear?" Ethan asked, a flicker of genuine interest cutting through his emotional fatigue. "My cousin's girlfriend works in their HR department. Apparently, an anonymous but incredibly detailed email landed in their inbox Friday afternoon. It contained a full portfolio of evidence showing they were having an unauthorized relationship, arranging meetups on company time, and even using company software licenses for personal freelance work Caleb was doing on the side. Caleb was fired immediately for gross misconduct. Bella wasn't fired, but she was demoted, transferred to a backwater department with a significant pay cut, and the big promotion she was bragging about is permanently off the table. Ethan didn't admit to being the source of the email, but a profound sense of logical satisfaction settled over him. Actions had consequences. It was a simple, elegant algorithm. The divorce process moved at the speed of light. With irrefutable proof of adultery from the very beginning of the marriage, no children, and no truly shared property, Marcus Cole was able to push everything through. Within 3 months, it was finalized. Ethan kept the loft, his car, and his assets. He didn't have to pay Bella a single cent beyond legally splitting the minimal debt on their joint credit card. She received no alimony, no asset division, nothing. Bella's social humiliation was equally brutal. The story of the confrontation at the Summit Lounge spread through their social circle like wildfire. Leo, still furious on Ethan's behalf, told a few key mutual friends, and the Austin gossip mill did the rest. Bella, the marketing manager so obsessed with her brand, found her personal brand in ruins. She lost friends, and the couples who used to invite them out sided unanimously with Ethan. Her social media, once a curated highlight reel of a perfect life, became a wasteland of passive-aggressive comments until she finally deactivated all her accounts. Even her own family seemed to side with Ethan. Her mother called him a week after the split, her voice heavy with shame. "Ethan, I don't even know what to say." When Isabella told me what she did, I was horrified. I didn't raise my daughter to be that person. I just wanted to apologize to you, on behalf of our family. Ethan was genuinely touched. "Thank you, but you don't need to apologize for her. Bella is an adult who made her own choices. Still, you were always so good to her, and to us. You deserve so much better. I just hope you find someone who truly values you." Bella's relationship with Caleb didn't even last a month past their professional implosion. Apparently, Their passionate connection was a function of the thrill of secrecy and deception. Once they were both demoted or unemployed and facing the real-world consequences of their actions, the magic evaporated. Caleb dumped her, saying he needed space. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Ethan's life was already being rewritten with new, better code. He sold the loft, which now felt tainted by bad memories, and bought a stunning modern house in the hills west of Austin, with a pool and a view that stretched for miles. The space was entirely his, a clean slate. At work, freed from the emotional drain of a fraudulent marriage, Ethan thrived. He took the lead on a major new platform integration and executed it flawlessly. 6 months after the split, he was promoted to a leadership role, Director of Engineering, with a 40% salary increase and a hefty new package of stock options. 1-5. With his finances secure and his emotional state stabilized, Ethan started redeploying the resources he'd once poured into his marriage. He began traveling, something Bella had always claimed was a waste of money that could be better spent on designer clothes or lavish dinners. He took a solo trip to Japan, spending 3 weeks getting lost in the futuristic urban canyons of Tokyo and the serene, ancient temples of Kyoto. It was a complete system reboot, a process of rediscovering his own core programming without the malicious code of a partner who had betrayed him. He followed that with a trip to Europe, exploring the architectural marvels of Barcelona and the tech hubs of Amsterdam. Each trip was a patch, a debugging of his soul, an affirmation that his life hadn't crashed, it had just been restarted. A year after the divorce, on a hiking trip in Telluride, Colorado, Ethan met Sophie. He was having a solo dinner at the historic Hotel Lodge when he saw her at a nearby table with a group of friends. She was a veterinarian from Denver, and their paths crossed when the waiter accidentally gave him her craft beer. They struck up a conversation about hiking trails and dogs, and it simply didn't stop. They spent the rest of the evening at the lodge bar, talking about everything and nothing. Work, life, their shared love for the mountains. Sophie had a calm, grounded energy that Ethan found magnetic, a stark contrast to Bella's curated, high-strung persona. When she mentioned she was from Denver, just a short flight from Austin, Ethan felt a spark of genuine, uncorrupted hope. For the first time since the divorce, he found himself wanting to build a new connection. They exchanged numbers, and the code for his new life began to compile. Ethan and Sophie started seeing each other regularly, alternating weekends between Austin and Denver. From the very beginning, Ethan was completely transparent about his past. He told her about Bella, the swift and brutal nature of the betrayal, and the difficult process of rebuilding his ability to trust. Sophie listened without judgment, shared stories of her own past heartbreaks, and together they built a new relationship on a foundation of radical honesty. There were no hidden processes, no encrypted files. Everything was open source. After 2 years of careful, intentional dating, Ethan proposed to Sophie on a mountain peak outside Telluride, not far from where they'd first met. This time, he knew the source code was solid. They had done the work, deep conversations about expectations, family, finances, and a future built on shared values, not just fleeting attractions. There was no rush, no ignored red flags, just 2 people who truly knew each other, choosing to merge their lives. Their wedding was small but perfect. 50 of their closest friends and family at an outdoor ceremony in a stunning Colorado valley. Leo was his best man again. During his speech, he raised a glass and said, "To Ethan, a man who knows how to debug a catastrophic failure and write a beautiful new future. I promise, this time there will be no late-night calls from rooftop bars." The crowd laughed, but Ethan saw the profound truth behind the joke. That call from Leo had been a painful but necessary system interrupt that saved him from years of compounded misery and lies. Bella, meanwhile, continued to execute her own downward spiral. The last Ethan heard through the grapevine She was on her third or fourth failed relationship since their divorce, still stuck in the same demoted job. She lived in a small, overpriced apartment far from the trendy downtown scene she once loved, saddled with the reputation she had so spectacularly built for herself. Her mother still sent Ethan a polite, brief message on his birthday, always with a hint of sorrow for her daughter's choices. Ethan always replied kindly, but kept a respectful distance. 3 years after that night at the Summit Lounge, the man Ethan had become was a complete upgrade from his former self. He and Sophie bought a beautiful modern home on the outskirts of Denver, with a huge yard for the 2 rescue dogs they adopted, something Bella had always vetoed as too messy. Sophie got pregnant, and they had a daughter, a little girl named Clara, who brought a depth of joy to Ethan's life he hadn't known was possible. He never looked back. The lesson Ethan integrated from that fateful night was clear and powerful. A true friend will run a diagnostic, even when the results are painful. Acting quickly and decisively in the face of betrayal isn't cruelty. It's self-respect. Some people reveal their true, flawed code much sooner than others, and as painful as it is to discover, it's a blessing in disguise. And finally, he learned that trusting again after a total system breach is possible, but only after you've done the work to patch your own vulnerabilities and find someone whose code is as honest and open as your own. Leo remained his best friend, a proud uncle to little Clara, and they sometimes looked back on that night not with pain, but with a strange sense of gratitude. The data Leo provided had been a gift. It had spared Ethan the prolonged agony of a lie that could have festered for years, perhaps with children involved, with far more at stake. Ethan had learned that short-term pain saves you from long-term system decay. That truth, however harsh, is always better than a comfortable illusion. And that sometimes, the best revenge is simply to live well, to build a life of genuine happiness, and to let the natural consequences of another's flawed programming run their inevitable course. Bella had lost a good man, a promising marriage, and a comfortable life, all for a few cheap thrills with a man who discarded her the moment she became an inconvenience. Ethan, on the other hand, had lost an illusion but gained clarity. He'd lost an unfaithful wife but gained the freedom to find a true partner. He'd lost 2 months of a fake marriage but gained a lifetime of authenticity and peace. And as Ethan held his daughter in his arms, with Sophie by his side and their dogs chasing each other across the backyard of the home they had built together, he knew with absolute certainty that he had won. Not through vengeance, but by having the courage to uninstall a broken program and build something genuinely beautiful in its place.